Good morning all. Let's continue looking at some Näcmetdinov games. This is also in self-interest because I think I do want to improve my king attacking and king consciousness before the London Classic. So I think what a great attacking player Näcmetdinov is. He's to me, I think he might actually be more brilliant than Tal, but he was held back in the old USSR, maybe for political or other reasons. Wiki mentions something, but anyway, he had a very good record against Mikhail Tal, according to ChessGames.com. 3-1, beating Tal 3 times, just losing once. And here is we saw a 1961 Tal win before. That's on the collections page for brilliancies. But let's go back to Moscow 1957, where they met. So Näcmetdinov, playing white, kicked off with e4. And there was a French defence from Tal. Okay, it doesn't quite suit his character to say as much as the Sicilian one would argue, but it was the very imbalance creating Winawer variation. So Black's offering that dark square bishop for double pawns. It was Botvinnik, I think, who really popularised the Winawer. Okay, but in this line, Näcmetdinov plays actually bishop d2, which I think was actually popularised later by Timon. Bishop d2, I think might have been falling out of popularity. I think knight h6 might be an idea. Please let me know what you think is the best system against bishop d2 here. Knight e7 was played, and now after a3, so Black gave up the dark square bishop, and without getting the double pawns. Okay, so is this a problem, this dark square bishop? Is it actually going to be, that useful on this diagonal? Is it just going to be supporting d4? Well, after b6, we see the move b4. And with this move, if Black hadn't played b6, then, bc would be a serious issue. But b4 also has some advantages, maybe b5 if knight c6 later. Okay, so queen c7, now knight f3. So White has the two bishops, but this bishop's not particularly great at the moment. Knight d7, and now bishop e2. Okay, it doesn't look as though the position's going to explode with a vicious attack later. So it's interesting how these positions can sometimes do that. Knight c6, both sides castle. And now b takes c5. Okay, first pawn exchange of the game, and now another pawn exchange of the game. So with these pawn exchanges, in theory, these bishops might actually be more activated. Knight c takes e5. Alright, so this leaves these pawns kind of shattered, doesn't it? Regaining that pawn there. But knight takes, and Black now is starting to be under pressure on this diagonal. Mikhail Tal is facing real pressure now. Queen d4. For the first time in the game, he's forced into a defensive move, which looks adequate. It looks as though, what will White have here after f6? If we take stock of this position and try and assess it, so are White's is the bishop pair really that powerful here? Maybe this diagonal, how is it going to be wrenched open? That's another question. This b file, is it going to be a problem, or is Black going to gang up on these double pawns? Will Black have time to do that? Just play positioning against this pawn structure. So what's going to happen? Well, Näcmetdinov plays f4, which drives away that knight from e5, obviously. So knight c6, and now curiously, he leaves his queen in a place which looks like it's tactically vulnerable. He plays actually queen e3, as though there might be the threat of d4 at some point. And in fact, Black, emphasises that look, d4, are you going to move the queen away from there? But it's not needed to move the queen away from there. It's constantly exerting a check on that bishop. It can't go there because of e6. So there's constant pressure on e6. Does Black really want to play bishop d7, though, to try and arrange, pressure on c5 and then later c2? That's the question. Is there a problem with bishop d7? Well, here, Mikhail Tal decides to liberate his bishop rapidly. After rook a d1, the for some reason he doesn't like the idea of playing this, quietly, bishop d7. Maybe there's f5 immediately, in fact. You see, bishop d7 would mean d5 is a bit more vulnerable to f5, I guess. I'm not engine checking this, but maybe this is the problem with it. So e5 was played here, which has a side effect of opening up even more lines. And remember, these bishops, they're growing in strength, in theory, if the position's getting opened up. So f takes, f takes. Okay, now looks like there's a really real threat of d4. So I think this next move, although quiet looking, is kind of brilliant. And no, it's not putting a piece near the opponent's king or anything. It's kind of brilliant for keeping this d4 in check. And it's sort of logical, I think. Okay, maybe not that brilliant, but it seems to be a good move. Okay, it's bishop b5. So it's positively inviting d4, but if d4, we have queen e4, I think. And then there's going to be problems for black. So bishop b7 is worth investigating, I think, but I think maybe just bishop c4 check here, and then rook f7. That looks as though black's going to be in big trouble. Alright, so Mikhail, in this position, plays actually bishop b7. He's forced into a passive state here. And now we have queen g3. So finally the queen glides over to the king side. So we've got some potential firepower going on the diagonal. There's some pressure on d5. This bishop, how is it going to get back into the game though? It's keeping an eye on c6, keeping potential threat of bishop c6 and bishop e5. Okay. But that threat's not acted on here. Rook d7 is played. So why can't white win that e5 pawn with bishop takes c6? I think maybe queen takes c6, and then if queen takes c5, there's queen takes c5 check. So it will be exposing this pawn. This pawn can't be exposed because then the whole c file is a bit of a liability. So white's got to play energetically here. So what does he do? He just doubles up rooks, prepares to double up rooks on the f file, rook f2, and now a little move h3, so giving his king some air, maybe trying to escape this diagonal, as you do, a bit of prophylaxis. Bishop a8. Okay, that bishop looks a bit hemmed in over there. So what was the purpose of that move? Maybe it's unveiling potentially rook b8, just to hit the bishop, maybe come down the b file at some point. Here though, bishop a4. The bishop's got the luxury, at least with these double pawns, of just coming back to b3 to put pressure on d5. So Mikhail's position here is not so nice. He doesn't want to open up that diagonal, particularly by playing d4. He plays actually bishop b7. Now we see a nice little Magnus Carlsen type move just before the attack. Just get the king out of this diagonal, so that c5 isn't the problem. So another waiting move from Mikhail. He's just waiting. Is a draw going to be agreed, or is white going to try and press home an advantage here? Well, we see a sign he's interested in winning this game with this next move. He plays actually rook f5. Okay, so instead of routinely doubling up rooks, he's putting more pressure on e5. There's a pin being maintained on the queen. There's a nasty diagonal here if the rook ever moved and g7 wasn't protected. So black's under pressure. Mikhail actually plays e4, inviting a trade of queens. So would this signal the end of white's attack to take the queens off here? Well, what do you think? If you looked at this position, okay, do we want the queens off? Couldn't we just win d5? That's the question. Well, in fact, I think that's what Mikhail spotted. He could just win d5 and win that position. So he took the queens off, and then f takes d5. So black was under serious pressure anyway. Mikhail plays e3, and now rook on the 7th. Okay, hitting the rook, hitting g7. e2 was played. But this is terrible now for black, because these bishops are now really gunning for the black king. The sudden shock now. Bishop b3 check, and it has become apparent here that if king h8, there's bishop takes g7 mate. Have a look at this. How embarrassing for Mikhail to be mated by these two bishops. But so he gives up a rook. He's lost this now. Bishop takes e6, and now he just finally resigns. Bishop takes g7. So what can we say? Let's have a look at this position actually, because let's continue here for a moment. If king e8, there's not much to continue actually. Bishop f7 mate. So the bishops are like doing a good job. The rook's protected by the rook on d1, so this pawn isn't a problem. How did that game happen? It was just so an interesting line against the Winawer, just which was later popularised by Jan Timman of the Netherlands. Bishop d2. Okay, so knight e7. The line with CD knight b5 is complex. There's a lot of theory, but we might get some compensation with a knight on d6 sometimes, or even just coming back to d4. I don't really know the theory that well. After a3, bishop takes though. White's avoided the double pawns, but this idea of b4, it's quite interesting here. Queen c7. Now knight f3. So we have bishop e2, both sides castling, and now this first pawn exchange, another pawn exchange. Okay, maybe Mikhail could have considered knight takes c5. Maybe he didn't want to leave a pawn which could be used as a basis for attack here. No, that's a problem. So he wanted to knock out that centre pawn while he could. But it did seem now White was able to build up pressure rather cleverly. First with this queen e3, keeps the queen flexible. Queen could come to g3 later. It's eyeing e6 for the moment, tying bishop, restricting bishop possibilities. From g3 it'll be coordinating well with that bishop. So rook d8, rook a d1. So the big decision here, if bishop d7, there's f5 undermining d5. What can black do? This is a bit of a problem, this position already. There's a lot of pressure. So Mikhail played e5 so that the f file's peeled open. And now this nice move, putting pressure on the dark square points indirectly really. Bishop b5, especially e5. So bishop b7. Now there's queen g3, logically coordinating these guys. Rook d7 was played now. So rook f2. Flexible sort of move. Is White going to simply double up rooks? In fact, now the king is tucked away. So prophylaxis before the attack. Bishop a4. Now king h1. Okay, not king h2. Doesn't want to leave the king on that diagonal. And now he goes in for it, the kill. He plays rook f5. So immediately threatening, maybe just bishop takes c6 and rook takes e5. Okay, e4, this commitment to try and get this pawn going to create some tactical opportunities, dropping d5 though. And with that, his 7th rank is vulnerable. So rook f takes d5, black's 7th rank and this huge bishop on this diagonal is unchallenged. There's no black dark square bishop. That was given up, of course, very early on in the opening. So rook d7. Okay, so e2 is played. But now there's the vicious bishop b3, unveiling the fact that if king h8, there's bishop takes g7 mate. So Mikhail, he could have resigned, but he played rook e6, and this could have been the continuation, So king f8, bishop takes g7. Okay, he resigned here, apparently. So if king e8, which is forced, then there will be bishop f7 mate. Another crush from Näcmetdinov. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.